This is a short presentation on one of the central premises that guides understanding by design and really any effective curriculum framework. It's all about transfer. So a couple of key questions that we need to ponder as we're developing curriculum or as we're planning our classrooms. Those are, what are the ends in terms of what we're building with our students, and what are our means to those ends? And for a long time it could be argued we've perverted what the real ends of education are by saying that those ends are finite facts and skills. In truth, and one of the central tenets of understanding by design is that the content or the facts and skills, that finite minutia that we teach on an everyday basis, is really important. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it is only important in that it is a means to a larger ends, and that's using content to use one's mind well. And there are various ways that we can describe in tangible ways what using one's mind well means, and that will be the subject of the actual curriculum videos that are upcoming. So with those two key questions, we have to acknowledge that we have inputs and we have outputs. And the means are what we do as educators to achieve our ends. So this is everything we do on a day-to-day basis in the classroom, planning curriculum, what we do to make learning happen. And then there are the outputs, and these are our ends. This is, what does a student look like who comes out of a particular unit? What does a student look like who ends the school year from our class? What are they able to do? And here's the important thing: independently, on their own, with the content that they've learned. That is the true ends. So much of education and educational reform is placed upon inputs and what we do on a constant basis, when our real end goal needs to be focused on the outputs, and that is the type of student we want to create who operates independently of our assistance. So there are various educational inputs that I noted some of them just now. There's planning, there's assessment, there's teaching methods, there's strategies. But basically what you're looking at here is a graduate school scope of how to become a teacher. And that's all really important. Again, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but we need to recognize our true ends, and that is independent learning. So another way to think about this is in terms of a game. So we often think of schooling as a sort of an abstraction that doesn't really relate to the real world, as something that we concoct in order to prepare our students for the real world, but oftentimes doesn't mirror real world tasks, authentic tasks, and therefore all of that independent thinking that we're trying to create within our students. And so one way to think about this is that most traditional education in the United States and New Mexico is built around layup drills, that we do drill and skill, we focus on the finite facts and skills without application, transfer, and use. Those three key words being central to the understanding by design framework. Can our students take what they've learned in fact and skill and use it, transfer it, and apply it? If we know that they can do that, then we know that they understand. If they cannot use, transfer, and apply to a novel problem or a novel situation, then they may be able to regurgitate. They may be able to tell me exactly what I told them in exactly the manner I told it to them in. So another way to think about this is scrimmages, slightly better than layup drills, but it's still to the same degree focuses on a lack of understanding and to some extent regurgitative skills. So one of the ways to think about that in the top left corner is the classic pH study that's done in all science classrooms, as if this is real scientific research, when it always has the same ends. In other words, we're just guiding students through a series of steps that always ends the same way. And the question here is not, is it important to know how to find pH within a science lab, because that is important, but it's only important to solve a problem, to solve a novel problem. And if we're not asking our students to do that, then they're not able to truly understand. There are the classic math word problems, though sometimes in math, word problems, because of the strains of certain segments of math, Algebra 1, for example, Algebra 2 perhaps, it's very difficult to get authentic application from students, and so word problems can, in these sort of scrimmage scenarios, can sometimes be the best that we can get out of performance from our students. And then there's the classic essay to write about something that asks you to employ your written skills to show your comprehension of something, but doesn't do so in a novel problem. Then there's the game, and so we come back to these three terms. If you truly care about understanding, and understanding by design, by its title, clearly focuses on that, then you care about teaching students how the basic facts, the basic skills that you would teach in any traditional education. But you acknowledge those as not the ends, but as the means towards having students apply, use, and transfer those skills in a novel problem, in a real-world problem, to demonstrate understanding. This can all be encompassed within this phrase, and this phrase allows us to truly focus on the ends. I want my students to learn blank. So in any classroom, you can think perhaps it's the Pythagorean theorem, it's noun-verb agreement, it's the scientific process, the various steps of the scientific process. So we can all fill in that first part, but it's the second part that we oftentimes lack in education and has so many consequences that we lack this second portion of the sentence based because of motivation, but most importantly, because of our attempts at getting students to understand and find applicability, means consequence of the fact and skill they're learning. What we so often do is leave this latter part of the sentence out, and learning becomes an abstraction to students. It becomes various facts and skills that aren't connected to why they're important and so what, why do they matter. And so that second part of the sentence is so that in the long run, on their own, they will be able to blank. Putting this all together, you might ask yourself, I want my students to learn verb-noun agreement so that in the long run, on their own, they will be able to communicate effectively in written language. And you can go even further than that. But the point here is that we're framing so that we are considering the why and so what of study for students, and mandating, not just if it's fun, but mandating that they apply their learned skills to demonstrate understanding. So again, back to our key questions for you to keep in your mind. What are the ends of what you're building with your students, and what are the means?